October 19th, 2020, 9:30 in the morning. Paris is waking up. Coffee shops are filling. The metro rumbles beneath the streets. And at the Louvre Museum, the world's most famous art gallery, the doors have just opened. Tourists pour in beneath the iconic glass pyramid. They're here to see the Mona Lisa, the Venus de Milo, treasures spanning 5,000 years of human history. But in exactly 7 minutes, something is about to happen that will send shockwaves around the world. 4 men are about to steal 88 million euros worth of Napoleon's crown jewels from one of the most secure buildings on Earth, and then disappear into thin air. This is the story of the 2025 Louvre Heist, the most audacious museum robbery in modern history, a crime so bold, so perfectly executed, that it reads like a Hollywood script. Except this isn't fiction, this really happened. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly how they did it. Let me take you back to where this story truly begins. Not on October 19th, 2025, but centuries earlier. Because to understand why these jewels were worth stealing, you need to understand what they represent. The French crown jewels aren't just expensive trinkets. They're fragments of an empire, symbols of power, love, betrayal, and revolution. Their story begins in the age of kings. For centuries, the monarchy of France accumulated jewels like no other power on earth. Diamonds from India, emeralds from Colombia, sapphires from Ceylon. Each stone was hand-picked, each piece crafted by the finest jewelers in Europe. These weren't just accessories, they were statements. A crown encrusted with diamonds told the world, "I am chosen by God. I am absolute. I am untouchable." Kings wore them at coronations. Queens flaunted them at state dinners. They were passed down through generations, each gem carrying the weight of history. And then came the Revolution. The French people rose up against the monarchy. King Louis XVI and Queen Marie Antoinette were overthrown, tried, and executed by guillotine. The crown jewels? Seized by the new republic? Some were sold off to fund the Revolutionary Wars, others were stolen in the chaos. Many simply vanished, but not all. The most valuable pieces were preserved. And when Napoleon Bonaparte seized power in 1799, he understood something crucial. Symbols matter. Napoleon wasn't born into royalty. He was a soldier, a commoner who crowned himself emperor. And he needed to legitimize his rule. So he commissioned new crown jewels, diadems for his wives, necklaces dripping with diamonds, brooches studded with emeralds. Each piece was designed to rival the old monarchy, to prove that Napoleon's empire was just as magnificent, just as eternal. One of the most stunning pieces was an emerald necklace gifted to his second wife, Empress Marie-Louise. Over 1,000 diamonds, set in gold. It took master jewelers months to create. Another was a tiara commissioned by Napoleon III for his marriage to Empress Eugénie in 1853. This wasn't just jewelry, this was a crown. 2,000 diamonds, 212 pearls, a masterpiece of 19th century craftsmanship. These jewels witnessed Napoleon's rise, his coronation, his conquests across Europe, and they witnessed his fall. After Napoleon's defeat, the jewels remained. They passed through empires, republics, restorations. France changed governments more than a dozen times, but the jewels endured. By the 20th century, they were no longer worn. They were history, artifacts, and they found a permanent home in the Louvre Museum. specifically in a room called the Galerie d'Apollon. If you've ever been to the Louvre, you know it's massive. 782,910 square feet of galleries, staircases, and corridors. It's easy to get lost. Most tourists head straight for the Mona Lisa. She's in the Dinan wing, behind bulletproof glass, surrounded by crowds taking selfies. But if you veer off the main path, climb a staircase, and walk through a series of quieter galleries, you'll find yourself in one of the most breathtaking rooms in the entire museum, the Galerie d'Apollon. Built in the 1660s under King Louis XIV, the Sun King, this gallery is pure opulence. The ceiling is a riot of color, painted panels depicting the sun god Apollo in all his glory. Gold leaf covers every surface. Chandeliers hang like frozen fireworks, and along the walls, in glass display cases, rest the French crown jewels. The collection is smaller than it once was. Much was sold or lost over the centuries. But what remains is extraordinary. The Regent diamond, 140 carats. One of the purest diamonds ever discovered, valued at 51 million euros alone. The Sancy diamond, a pale yellow stone with a history stretching back to the 1400s. The Hortensia, a pink diamond once owned by Queen Hortense, mother of Napoleon III. And then there are the jewels, the diadems, the necklaces, the brooches. These pieces aren't just displayed, they're protected. Each case is made of reinforced glass. Alarms are embedded in the frames. Security cameras monitor the room, or at least they're supposed to, because in 2025, the Louvre had a problem. For years, the museum had been struggling, not with visitors, those were pouring in by the millions, but with resources. The Louvre is owned by the French government, and like many public institutions, it faced budget cuts, staff reductions, aging infrastructure. By the summer of 2025, the cracks were showing. In July, Louvre employees went on strike. They weren't asking for raises, they were demanding safety. The museum was overcrowded. Security was stretched thin. There weren't enough guards to monitor every gallery. One union representative said it bluntly, "The destruction of security jobs at the Louvre has created vulnerabilities." Management promised to address the issues. A security audit was conducted. Recommendations were made, but implementing them, that takes time and money. And time was something the Louvre didn't have, because somewhere in Paris a team of thieves was already planning. Let's talk about heists for a moment. Most robberies are opportunistic. A smashed window, a grabbed purse, quick, messy, and usually unsuccessful. But a heist? That's different. A heist is a work of art. It requires planning, research, patience. The best heist crews spend months, even years, studying their target. They learn the layout, the schedules, the security measures, they identify weaknesses, and then they strike. The 2025 Louvre heist was no exception. We don't know exactly when the planning began, but investigators believe it started long before October 19th. The thieves needed to answer several questions. First, how do we get in? The Louvre has multiple entrances, but they're all monitored. Security guards, metal detectors, bag checks. Walking through the front door wasn't an option. But the museum is huge and old. There are windows, service entrances, blind spots. The thieves found one. The Louvre sits along the Seine River. The southern facade faces the water. It's a quieter side of the museum, fewer tourists, less foot traffic, and crucially, fewer cameras. The Apollo Gallery is on the second floor, with windows overlooking the river. Those windows are high, too high to reach from the ground, but not too high for a lift. Second question, how do we access the jewels? The display cases in the Apollo Gallery are reinforced, but they're not impenetrable. Angle grinders, power tools used in construction, can cut through metal and glass. The thieves would need to bring those tools, and they'd need to work fast. Third question, how do we escape? This is where most heists fail. You can steal the jewels, but if you can't get away, you're caught. Paris is one of the most surveilled cities in Europe. Thousands of cameras, police everywhere. The thieves needed speed, and they needed to disappear before anyone could react. Their solution? Motorcycles, specifically Yamaha T-Max scooters. These aren't your average scooters. They have 560 cubic centimeter engines. Top speed? Over 100 miles per hour. In Parisian traffic, they're perfect. Small enough to weave between cars, fast enough to outrun pursuit. But here's the genius part. The thieves didn't just plan the heist, they disguised it. On the morning of October 19th, they showed up dressed as construction workers. Think about that for a second. Paris is full of construction, scaffolding on old buildings, workers in high-vis vests, trucks with ladders and lifts. No one gives them a second glance, and that's exactly what the thieves were counting on. October 19th, 2025. It's a Sunday. The Louvre is open. Tourists are arriving. The weather is mild, a perfect autumn day in Paris. At 9 a.m., the museum opens its doors. By 9:15, hundreds of people are inside. They're lining up to see the Mona Lisa. They're wandering through Egyptian antiquities. They're taking photos beneath the glass pyramid. No one is paying attention to the Seine-side entrance. At 9:30 a.m., a truck arrives. It's a white commercial vehicle with a Bucker furniture lift mounted on the back. These lifts are commonly used in Europe to move furniture into apartments through windows, perfect for old buildings without elevators. The truck parks along the Quai François Mitterrand right beside the museum. Inside the truck, 4 men. They're wearing construction gear, hard hats, high visibility vests, face coverings, probably masks or balaclavas. From a distance, they look like any other work crew. The lift begins to rise. It's quiet, smooth. Bucker would later brag about this on social media. Their lifts are engineered for stealth. The platform ascends toward the second floor, toward the Apollo Gallery. People are walking along the Seine, jogging, taking photos of the Louvre. No one stops them. At 9:34 a.m., the lift reaches the window. One of the men pulls out an angle grinder. Now, if you've never heard an angle grinder, let me tell you, they're loud. A high-pitched scream of metal on glass. But this is Paris. There's traffic, construction noise. The city is never quiet. And besides, they're only going to need a few seconds. The grinder bites into the window frame. Sparks fly, the glass shatters. They're in. Inside the Apollo Gallery, the alarms should be going off. But here's the thing about alarms. They only work if someone responds quickly. The Louvre's security system is layered. Motion sensors, glass break detectors, cameras. But the museum is enormous. Security personnel are spread thin, and the thieves are fast. 2 of the men climb through the window. The other 2 stay on the lift, ready for the escape. Inside, the gallery is breathtaking. Gold ceilings, painted masterpieces, and in the center, the display cases. The thieves move straight toward 2 specific cases. They know exactly what they're looking for. They pull out angle grinders and attack the glass. The cases are reinforced, but angle grinders don't care. The tools cut through metal frames, glass shatters, and then they reach inside. First, they grab a diamond and sapphire diadem. It's light, portable, worth millions. Next, an emerald necklace, over 1,000 diamonds set in gold, Napoleon's gift to his wife. Then brooches, bracelets, another tiara. They're moving fast. No hesitation. This isn't their first robbery. But in their haste, they make a mistake. One of the pieces, the crown of Empress Eugénie, is larger than they expected. It's a massive headpiece, over 1,000 diamonds, intricate gold work. They try to pull it through the opening in the case. It doesn't fit. They yank harder. The crown slips. It falls. They don't stop to pick it up. By 9:38 a.m., they're done. 4 minutes inside the museum. They climb back out the window, onto the lift. The platform descends. By the time they hit the ground, museum security is just starting to respond. But it's too late. 2 Yamaha T-Max scooters are waiting. The 4 men jump on, engines roar to life, and they're gone. 7 minutes. That's all it took. From the moment the truck arrived to the moment the scooters disappeared into Paris traffic. 7 minutes. Inside the Louvre, chaos erupts. Alarms are blaring. Security guards rush to the Apollo Gallery. What they find is devastating. Shattered glass, 2 empty display cases, and on the floor, the crown of Empress Eugénie, damaged but intact. The thieves left behind a trail of evidence. 2 angle grinders, still warm, a blowtorch, a container of gasoline, likely intended to destroy the lift and erase evidence, but they didn't have time. Gloves, a walkie-talkie, a yellow high-vis vest, a construction helmet, and most importantly, DNA. French police would later confirm that DNA traces were found on the gloves and helmet. That DNA would become the key to cracking the case. But in that moment, as security guards stood in the Apollo Gallery surrounded by broken glass, one thing was clear. The Louvre had just been robbed. News of the heist spread fast. By 10 a.m., French media was reporting a major incident at the Louvre. By 11 a.m., it was global news. Louvre Museum robbed in broad daylight. Napoleon's crown jewels stolen in daring heist. Thieves escape with 88 million euros in 7 minutes. The world was stunned. This wasn't some small-time burglary. This was the Louvre, the most famous museum on earth. And it had been hit like a jewelry store. French culture minister Rachida Dati arrived at the museum within hours. She posted on X, formerly Twitter, "A robbery took place this morning at the opening of the Louvre. No injuries to report. I am on site alongside the museum teams and the police." But behind the calm statement, the French government was in crisis mode. This wasn't just a theft. This was a national embarrassment. The Louvre is a symbol of France, of art, of culture, of history, and someone had just walked in and taken a piece of that history. President Emmanuel Macron issued a statement condemning the robbery. "This is an attack on a heritage that we cherish because it is our history," he said. "We will recover these jewels. We will bring the perpetrators to justice." But even as Macron spoke, investigators were asking hard questions. How did this happen? How did 4 men in broad daylight break into one of the most secure buildings in the world? The answer was uncomfortable. Security at the Louvre had been failing for years. Let me paint you a picture of what security should look like at a place like the Louvre. Cameras on every entrance, every window, every blind spot. Armed guards patrolling the galleries. Motion sensors. Glass break alarms. Immediate response protocols. The reality? Budget cuts had hollowed out the security staff. Cameras existed, but many were outdated. Some didn't cover critical areas, like the send-side windows. Alarms worked, but response times were slow. The museum had been operating on a shoestring, and everyone knew it. Just months before the heist, in July 2025, Louvre employees went on strike. They weren't asking for more money. They were begging for more security. A statement from the union Syndicale Solidaires was blunt. The destruction of security jobs at the Louvre has created dangerous vulnerabilities. Museum director Laurence Descartes had even requested a security audit from Paris police. The audit was conducted. Recommendations were made, but implementing them takes time and funding, neither of which the Louvre had. When the heist happened, those recommendations were just beginning to be put in place. Too little, too late. 3 days after the heist, Laurence Descartes appeared before France's Senate Committee on Culture. It was a brutal session. Senators grilled her on the failures, the lack of cameras, the slow response, the inadequate staffing. Descartes admitted the shortcomings. Parts of the building were not adequately covered by external cameras at the time of the theft, she said. She also revealed something shocking. On the day of the heist, October 19th, she had submitted her resignation. The Minister of Culture rejected it. Descartes called the heist a terrible failure and said it deeply shocked museum staff, fellow citizens, and admirers of the Louvre around the world. But apologies wouldn't bring back the jewels, and the public was angry. Opposition politicians tore into the government. Jordan Bardella, leader of the far-right National Rally Party, called the heist a humiliation. How far will the state continue to decay? He asked. Eric Ciotti, a conservative lawmaker, went even further. This robbery is the ultimate symbol of the government's collapse, he said. The entire nation is threatened. Even on social media, the reaction was harsh. Memes flooded the internet. One viral post came from an unexpected source, Bucker, the company that made the furniture lift. They posted a cheeky message highlighting how quiet and efficient their lifts are. Silent, smooth, efficient, the post read, alongside a picture of their lift. It was deleted within hours. But the internet never forgets. The heist had become a symbol of a nation that couldn't protect its own heritage. And while politicians bickered, investigators got to work. Within hours of the heist, the Paris prosecutor's office opened a full-scale investigation. Lead prosecutor Laure Becquot assigned over 100 investigators to the case. This wasn't just any robbery. This was an assault on French history, and they were going to catch the people responsible. The investigators had several leads. First, the physical evidence. The thieves had left behind a treasure trove of forensic clues. The angle grinders, the blowtorch, the gloves, the helmet, all of it was sent to labs for analysis. And that's where the breakthrough came. DNA traces were found on the gloves and on the inside of the helmet. Not just one profile, multiple. That DNA was run through France's criminal database, and they got hits. 2 men in their 30s, both from Seine-Saint-Denis, a suburb northeast of Paris. Both had prior criminal records. Both were known to police for jewel thefts. Second, the surveillance footage. The Louvre's cameras may have been inadequate, but they weren't non-existent. Footage showed the thieves entering through the window, smashing the cases, fleeing on scooters. City cameras captured the scooters heading east toward the highways. License plates were visible on one of the bikes. Investigators traced the plate. It led to a dead end. The bike had been stolen weeks earlier, but it gave them a direction. Third, the truck. The furniture lift was registered to a rental company. Police tracked down the rental. It had been paid for in cash. Fake ID, another dead end. But investigators didn't give up. They analyzed the escape route, traffic cameras, ATM footage, cell phone tower pings. Piece by piece, they were building a profile of the suspects. And then, a week after the heist, they made their move. October 26, 2025. 8 days after the heist, Charles de Gaulle Airport, just outside Paris. It's 10 p.m. The terminal is busy. Travelers rushing to catch flights. At gate 47, a man in his 30s is waiting to board a flight to Algeria. He's carrying a single bag, traveling light. He hands his passport to the gate agent. She scans it, and an alert pops up. She signals to airport security. Within seconds, plainclothes police officers surround the man. He doesn't resist. He's arrested on the spot. At the same time, across Paris, a second suspect is detained. He was preparing to flee to Mali. Both men are taken into custody. Both match the DNA profiles found at the Louvre. By October 29th, 5 more suspects are arrested. Some are believed to be part of the 4-man crew that entered the museum. Others may have been part of a larger network. Drivers, lookouts, fences. Prosecutor Laure Becquois held a press conference. "We have made significant progress," she said. 2 of the suspects have partially admitted their involvement. They were formally charged with organized theft and criminal conspiracy. Under French law, those crimes carry up to 15 years in prison. But there was a problem, a big problem. The jewels were still missing. This is where the story takes a darker turn. Because recovering stolen art, or in this case stolen jewels, is incredibly difficult. The thieves can't just walk into a pawn shop and sell a tiara worn by Empress Eugénie. These pieces are too famous, too recognizable. Any legitimate jeweler or collector would immediately identify them. So what do thieves do? They dismantle them. They pry out the diamonds, remove the emeralds, melt down the gold. What was once a priceless artifact becomes raw materials. The diamonds can be sold individually on the black market, maybe recut to disguise their origin. The gold can be melted and resold. The historical value? Gone. Investigators believe this is exactly what happened. Prosecutor Becquois said as much in a press conference. These jewels are now unsellable as intact pieces. Anyone who buys them would be guilty of handling stolen goods. But she also held out hope. I'd like to keep the hope that they will be found and returned to the Louvre and the nation. The stolen jewels were added to Interpol's Stolen Works of Art database. This is a global registry of over 57,000 missing cultural items. Museums, galleries, auction houses, and law enforcement agencies around the world can access it. If any of the stolen pieces or even fragments surface, there's a chance they'll be flagged. But the reality is grim. Most stolen art is never recovered. The 1990 Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum heist in Boston, 13 masterpieces stolen, none ever found. The 1911 theft of the Mona Lisa? It took 2 years to recover, and only because the thief tried to sell it. The 1998 Corot painting stolen from the Louvre? Still missing. The odds are not good, and with every passing day, the chances of recovery shrink. Let's talk about the bigger picture for a moment, because the Louvre heist isn't an isolated incident. Museum thefts are shockingly common. In 2019, Thieves stole a solid gold toilet, yes, really, from Blenheim Palace in England, worth over $1 million, never found. In 2020, priceless jewels were stolen from the Green Vault in Dresden, Germany. The thieves smashed display cases and grabbed everything they could. Some pieces were recovered, most weren't. In 2021, a bronze sculpture was stolen from a museum in London. In broad daylight, the pattern is clear. Museums are vulnerable. Why? Because they're public spaces. They're designed to be open, welcoming, accessible. But that accessibility creates risk. And in an era of budget cuts and austerity, security is often the first thing to suffer. The Louvre heist has forced a reckoning, not just in France, but around the world. How do we protect our cultural heritage? Do we lock everything behind bulletproof glass and armed guards? Do we limit access, turn museums into fortresses? Or do we accept that some level of risk is inevitable? These are hard questions, and there are no easy answers. What we do know is this: the Louvre failed, and it's not alone. After the heist, President Macron ordered an immediate security overhaul, not just at the Louvre, but at every major cultural site in France. The recommendations from the previous audit, ignored for months, were fast-tracked. More cameras, more guards, better alarms. But critics say it's too little, too late. The jewels are gone. The damage is done. And the world is watching. So where does the investigation stand now? As of early November 2025, 7 suspects are in custody. 2 have partially confessed. 4 more arrests may be coming. Investigators believe they've identified most, if not all, of the crew that carried out the heist. But the jewels? Still missing. And that's the tragedy. Because even if every suspect is caught and convicted, even if they spend decades in prison, the jewels may never be recovered. Napoleon's emerald necklace, Empress Eugénie's tiara, the diadem of Queen Marie Amélie, they may be gone forever, dismantled, sold, scattered across the black market, and with them, a piece of French history. Let me leave you with this. Heists capture our imagination because they're audacious, daring. They make the impossible seem possible. But behind every heist is a loss. The Louvre heist wasn't a victimless crime. It was an attack on culture, on history, on the shared heritage of humanity. Those jewels belonged to France, but they also belonged to the world. They were a window into the past, a connection to Napoleon, to the revolution, to the rise and fall of empires. And now they're gone. The thieves may have walked away with 88 million euros worth of jewels. But what they really stole was irreplaceable. As this case unfolds, one question lingers. Could this happen again? The answer, unfortunately, is yes. Museums around the world are watching the Louvre investigation closely. They're re-evaluating their own security, identifying vulnerabilities. But the truth is, no system is perfect. Where there's a will, there's a way. And as long as there are priceless artifacts on display, there will be people who want to steal them. The Louvre heist was bold. It was audacious. It was executed with precision. But it was also a warning that our cultural institutions are fragile, that the treasures we take for granted can disappear in an instant, and that protecting our heritage requires more than just alarms and cameras. It requires investment, vigilance, commitment. The French government has promised change. Time will tell if those promises are kept. For now, the Apollo Gallery remains closed. The display cases are empty. And somewhere in the world, Napoleon's crown jewels are hidden, waiting to be found or lost forever. This has been the story of the 2025 Louvre Heist, the most audacious museum robbery in modern history, a crime that took years to plan, 7 minutes to execute, and may never be fully solved. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. This is the kind of deep dive mystery content we do here on Mindvale. If you want more stories like this, unsolved heists, true crime, and the world's greatest mysteries, make sure you hit that subscribe button, drop a comment below. What do you think happened to the jewels? Will they ever be recovered? Do you think there was an inside man? I read every single comment, and if you want to see more stories from the criminal underworld, check out our full playlist of heist documentaries in the description below. Until next time, stay curious, stay skeptical, and remember, nothing is truly untouchable.